So in this video, we're going to look at the implementation, how we apply CRUD operations to the iRepository interface, and how we can apply this then to Dapper and Entity Framework Core again on our Postgres database. And we have here the get by ID async and get by specification. So those are two methods to get a single entity with different query patterns. Then what we will look in this video at is the add async and get all async methods. So we have on repository, generally speaking, some read operations and some create, update, and delete operations, but we will focus on those two, just creating and reading all of the items available, so it's easy to use for us. Then another important thing is the iUnit of work pattern, which I talked about in the introduction. And we will also implement this on our repositories, so we can use it both ways. For Dapper, we start with the connection again. So we need the Postgres connection to the database. And we have this done before, so I just simply use the constants here. For the get all async method, it's really easy because we just do a SQL star from customers, use the extension method from Dapper to open the database connection asynchronous and do a query async to list on our database connection. The thing is, in this case, we always use the async methods. I didn't do this before in the course, but this is how you usually would implement all of this. So now for Dapper, the unit of work is a little bit different here. So we need not to execute on the connection object directly, because this would then do a round trip to the database, but this is what we want to avoid with the unit of work pattern, as I explained. And for this, we have to do the commit async method from the unit of work interface and have a list of tasks here, the _dial tasks, and we'll start each task individually, and only when all tasks are done, we can clear the task list and everything worked fine. So you have to, of course, do some error handling and stuff, but we will ignore it for now. So the unit of work pattern, again, is just to have some sort of implicit transaction. But for further info, look into the slides video. So we add to the dial task list a new task, which we provide an asynchronous lambda statement, which in the end does the same thing which we would do with the connection directly. So we will simply use the execute async method here to insert our customers into the database. We just add one here, no range, because it's much easier this way. And we just provide the insert statement, the name as an anonymous object, and of the custom object we provide here. Then this combination of add async and commit we will use later on in our querying method when we start this program. So now we want to implement the other repository, which will be Entity Framework Core. For this, we need a Udemy context just to start with it. Usually you would have something like a dependency container, which would handle your lifetime. So this is not something you would usually implement. It's just for the example. So the commit async is just the save changes, and then we use a new Udemy context, because if you do the save changes, the context is no longer available. Then the add async is already done in the Entity Framework Core Udemy context, because it is kind of something like a repository pattern, and also includes the unit of work, as you can see, with the save changes. I will get to 2 or 3 words why we still want to use it for Entity Framework, but now let's just create our code we want to run here, just we can test and check our examples. So we have the 2 repositories, we will create both of them, and we will do an add or a create and then a read with the other repository. So first with Entity Framework, we will add, then without committing, reading the database, then committing, and then reading the database again, so that we can verify that the unit of work pattern works, which it does, but in the end, it's just a showcase. So we have the add async method on our repository, and we have the query all, which I created as a method here. So we have a customer we can add, and as I told, we will just add it, query all, commit, and again query all. The query all with method will simply join a string of all the items we have and push it to our console. We will then also provide the name from which this query came, so we can see what happened. So the next thing is then that we simply do the same for Dapper. We just copy the code and exchange the repositories. Where we formerly used Entity Framework, we will now use Dapper. So then we can run this, and just start out with Entity Framework. And we'll see the result here. So we queried from the Dapper repository, and the first time the first 5 customers arrived, and the second after the commit, we see the 6th one also. And then again, we run this with Dapper and we get the same result, of course, because it's the same kind of code. So this is everything I wanted to show. If you want to implement a real repository, you can download the code, check out the branch, and then just simply add what you need for your repository. So thank you guys for watching, and in the next video we will talk about why Entity Framework already has the iRepository and unit of work pattern built into it, why it might still be a good idea to use the repository pattern even with Entity Framework. So see you there.